awesome.
Yeah.
How many are yours? How many are hers?
2 are mine, 3 are hers.
Oh, awesome. And
Yeah.
everybody's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
So I'll be here this week.
That's great.
So, and you're in LA now.
I'm in
3 weeks out of
LA.
every month.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in LA pretty much. Like, I won't be back February and January, February. I'm going, and then I'll be back March to headline Carolines, which is awesome. I'm excited about that. Mid-March. But I'll be in LA for the next 2 months. I work a lot on the East Coast. I'm an East Coast act in terms of like I get booked and bought. My biggest markets are DC and Philly and Boston, and I do very well in Florida. And it's like I sell very well in Chicago and stuff. I end up being on the East Coast a lot because that's where I do the weekend. So every now and then I'll take a few days in New York, but I do love LA, and all my friends are out there, and Rogan's been amazing, and that whole crew of guys, Burt Kreischer and Theo Vaughn and Tony Hinchcliffe, that whole group of people I really like. And I love the Comedy Store, and David Spade's been great. I do that show out there with him.
Oh yeah, you do the PR notes for
his
David
PR
Spade.
thing,
That's great.
So I love LA, and I've always said, like, I always thought I was going to be a New York guy, and I was going to be that New York guy, and it just went another way, and I ended up in LA, and I ended up really liking it. So,
And you said earlier it's hard to predict 5 years ahead, but where do you see like right now there's probably more working comedians in the country than ever before. Like it's been almost like a fad. And I don't think it affects you, but there's so many people like vying for, the 52 Netflix specials that will happen this year.
What's happened is there was people tell me, they're like, we're in the transitional phase. I'm like, the transition happened years ago. What is a comedian? What's considered a comedian right now is very different than what was considered a comedian even 3-4 years ago. Um, it is a broad definition that includes people online, people on the internet, people that are on social media, people that are vlogging, people that are YouTube stars, people that and any and all of those people can do live events, whether they choose to do stand up or a podcast or a meet and greet. They can fill seats. You are now competing with everybody that's interesting or entertaining throughout all of the media landscape. That is fucking terrifying for a lot of people. I love stand-up. It's my first love. I'll do it all the time. But if you're just doing stand-up comedy right now, you're a blacksmith, and you have to be, conscious of the fact that the fans you're going to get are going to find you on their phones. They're not going to find you at a comedy club, no matter how prestigious it is. And hopefully those people follow you into comedy clubs and then follow you into theaters. But you're not doing yourself any favors by not being on social media, or not trying to, not only not being, you got to be funny on social media. You have to figure out a way. That's part of your job, is to find out how to be, you might hate it. Part of your job is to find out how to be funny on Twitter, funny on Instagram, maybe funny on TikTok, certainly funny on YouTube. That's part of your job description now. It wasn't, it was maybe 5 years ago if you were really ahead of the game, but certainly it wasn't 10 years ago. But it is now, and it's non-negotiable. I think that, so where it goes 5 years from now, who knows? But I do know that you're going to see the people that have figured it out and are figuring it out. I think their careers will flourish or blossom to a degree. Maybe the era of superstardom is over, the idea of the massive arenas, and that can still happen. But I think you're going to have your people. They're going to come out to see you. You're going to find a way to monetize that. They're going to enjoy what you say. There's going to be a lot of voices, and there's going to be small groups of people that enjoy those voices, as opposed to this top-down, gatekeeper enforced sphere of people. And then there's just this rigid hierarchy, and you can only kind of move up with when. But I mean, I could be wrong. These big streaming services, they could come in and colonize the internet. They probably will. And, it might go back to a more traditional trajectory in the new media landscape. You can already see it happening on YouTube and in certain places that, the cartels are involved, the big companies are involved, the entertainment companies are involved. They might carve the space out, and, you may go back to, like, gatekeepers may start being reintroduced. I mean, they're still around. Tech is still in its own way a gatekeeper. We're all kind of slaves to the algorithm.
Yeah.
But that is the future. So if you're a comedian right now and you're not spending a few minutes, really ideally an hour a day looking at your, not to use Gary's word, but your socials, you really have to dedicate yourself to that, because the nature of the job has kind of changed. You still have to be funny, but no one cares about the New York Times writing a review about your set. It's no one cares. But because they can't, they're not going to show their friend the New York Times review. Maybe an old couple cares that lives in Beacon, New York, and they're like, "Oh, isn't this nice?" But the majority of people are showing people a funny video you made, or a funny stand-up clip, or they're sending somebody your podcast, go listen to this. And if you don't have those things, how are people finding out about you? It's just not
Yeah.
happening.
So it's funny. This is going to be like a little bit the Gary V podcast,
Yeah.
but his book Crushing It, which I think he wrote in I want to say 2010 or 2009.
I wrote the forward to Crushing It. I'm kidding.
That'd be awesome. But that was for me like his best book, because that's what you're doing. Like every day you post on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you probably think about your podcast.
Yeah.
Crushing It is basically being on all the platforms, responding to some of the comments, and that's what he means by it. And that works.
It does work. I do think that you have to do it, but I also think that it's the part of the reason is because I kind of know what I want to do and who I am and what I think. So I think if you do that and you're just not a person yet, I mean, you can probably still have some success at it, but I think that like you got to be, and that's my only issue with him is like I totally get the Crushing It, but it's like you got to be a thing.
Right.
Like, and I think that's the thing is like you gotta interface with the world from a certain position. And to me, as a comedian, you got like, what is your funny? Who is your audience? Where are you like, what is the impetus for why people should follow you? Somebody said very early on, they said, if you don't make it, who loses out? If no one comes to the show,
That's a
what are
great
they
quote.
losing out on? I love that quote.
Who said that?
Someone who didn't make it. And they were probably quoting someone who did. But it was said to me in a Long Island diner by someone who said, yeah, what are people losing out on if you don't pop? Or if
That is the most amazing quote I've heard in a while. Because it's true.
That's what I like when I do my sketches or my video or anything like that. I'm trying to give people a more realistic version of a Saturday Night Live. Like, let me give them something that looks a little bit more like the world that we live in, as opposed to the world as we would want it to be.
Right. Because you again, if you said if you just do stand up, you're like a blacksmith in today's world. And you can see on Instagram or YouTube, you do these sketches that are just so funny. Like, you're the guard for Epstein, or your Meghan McCain is like a big one.
Right.
Or all these things are just brilliant. And I agree. You have to be more than one thing and kind of combine them. And that's
it's
this
fun.
unique
Here's the other
intersection.
thing. We have a lot of fun making those sketches. We have a lot of fun doing that. I have a lot of fun doing the podcast. I don't think it has to be drudgery and misery. And I think sometimes stand-ups get this idea that everything's got to be painful. We grow through pain. Some of that's true. But a lot of it, you have to sit back and go, like the transition of my career came from going to LA. It came from, I auditioned at Comedy Cellar, did not get passed. I had an okay set. It was fine. I don't blame her for not passing me. She could have, but she didn't, and that's fine. I'm totally cool with that. I like people that work there. I love the manager, Liz. I have only positive things to say about that play. I love Noam, the owner. It was on me that I just didn't have the. I'm like not always a great guy in 3 minutes. You know what I mean? Comedy wise, I went to LA and I was like, oh, that was crushing. And I went to LA and I was sitting in my friend's garage. And there was no spots in LA because I wasn't into the store. I just got there 2 years ago and I didn't even live there yet. I was just coming out back and forth. And I was sitting in my friend's garage. I think we were, and I don't even smoke. We were like smoking a cigarette. I was very depressed. And we were in his garage and he said, I have this desk and I have this camera and I have this green screen. And why don't you just sit at this desk and like just rant and go off? And Roseanne had just been canceled. This was, 2018, 17, 18. Roseanne had just been canceled. So I just went on this rant about how I'll do Roseanne. I'll be Roseanne. I was like, what What is Roseanne? She's fat and she has dinner. I'll be Roseanne. I'll be racist and have dinner. Give me the money. I'll be Roseanne. And it was just this really funny thing. And we put this old school 1990s backdrop of of the Twin Towers behind me, like a New York backdrop, like,
Mhm.
and we did it and we just put it out as a goof. And people were like, oh, this is funny. This is kind of ridiculous. This is funny and ridiculous. And we just kept doing them and kept doing them, kept doing them. And they started to get a little bit of attention. It started to get a little bit of attention. And then when the Megan one came, I just threw a wig on and I said, I'm Megan McCain. We edited the video on my friend's computer. You want to talk about the way things work and how odd things are? The computer he was editing it on broke. So he forgot the order he edited. He had it edited on. And then he drove 20 minutes to another friend's house to do it on a MacBook and just was like, I just forget how I even edited this. And he's like, oh, I guess it'll just go this way because these are the lines that just are the most ridiculous and make me laugh. He cut it together and it's viewed millions of times and people love it. Megan McCain hates me or whatever. But I mean, lighten up. You have 9 houses, calm down. But the whole thing is like that all came from being in a garage and not knowing what was next and thinking I had done a Comedy Central special. I'd done a 15-minute quarter hour on Netflix. I wasn't really selling any tickets. I'm wondering what the hell's going on. I'd done the JFL New Faces comedy. I'd done all those things. None of them worked. I tried to get into the cellar. I didn't get into the cellar. And unfortunately, I'm in LA in a garage with my friend. It's 3 a.m. I just performed, I think, in like a coffee house parking lot, literally on a milk crate. And I'm like, I'm in comedy 8 years. I'm fucked. What am I going to do? And then I was just like, oh, fuck, but I'm funny. But that's the thing. It's like, oh, but this isn't a con or a hustle or I'm actually funny. So I'm in a garage with a desk and a camera and a phone. We shot it on a phone. Let me just be funny in the environment that I'm in. And then that led me to the bigger podcast and to the bigger clubs. And then people started buying tickets and it led me back to the world's. And then it led me to getting past at the Comedy Store. And it's like, so I took the circuitous route to the places I wanted to be all along.
But I think now you always have to take a circuitous road,
Yes.
like everybody.
Yes.
Because who do you know that just did the normal route and is now going to be sell out arenas?
There are certain people that I think are very, very, that are like Seinfeldian, like Mark Norman, for example, who's like a Seinfeldian comedian in the sense that like he is a brilliant, prolific, smart, sharp tactician who's great and just can put out stuff over and over again. I don't know, like, listen, where anyone ends up, who ends up in an arena, I don't even know. But I look at somebody like Mark and it's like, I can understand Mark just doing stand-up. And that's not to denigrate him at all. That's actually to exalt him and say, he's a rare breed of human being that is just so suited for that specific type of stand-up. That being said, there's very few of those guys and gals that can go out there and do that. I think most people, and even Mark would say, marketing-wise now, he's also going to take a different route because you need to get people's attention.
Yeah, and he's got a podcast with Joe List.
Yeah, but I mean, I just love being crazy. So to me, to put on a wig or to do something stupid and get attention and by being very funny in the environment I'm in is just to me great. And then I love stand-up, and then to bring it all back to a stage is also great.
And your humor doesn't feel, particularly for these sketches, doesn't feel scripted at all. Like maybe you do multiple takes, but
and then we edit. So that's why my editor, this guy Ben that I met in LA, me and him think comedically in a very similar way. I go, he'll give me lines sometimes, but I go and he edits. Editing is so huge. That's what a guy like me's always not really been able to do, because I just put it out there as like this whirling dervish. And he's able to go, okay, let's try to find the through line here. Let's try to find what's funny. Let's try to punch it up.
And I feel like although you're trying to be funny, like that's more of a skill than, hey, let me go into funny mode. It seems like, again, you have something, it's
Wrong
almost
with me.
yeah,
That's
something
what funny people.
but that's just it. It's like every artist, every writer, every comedian, there's something damaged inside, and you kind of have to find that place and let
Yes.
it sort of come from that guttural
100%.
place.
Yes.
Because like when you're talking at office parties, you're not just sort of observing from afar. This is what an office party is like. It's like you hated your existence, it felt like, when you were in an office party,
I was
and then
taking
you
myself
exaggerate.
back to that, and I do this stream of consciousness on my podcast, but I was taking myself back to literally standing in a bar on Long Island, bar restaurant on Long Island, knowing I shouldn't be there and what that felt like. And that applies to anyone that's ever been somewhere where you know you shouldn't be. But that doesn't mean that all of you shouldn't be. That doesn't mean that there aren't parts of you that can make it work. But it was just standing in a place where I knew this is a stop on my journey. It's not the end of my journey, and I shouldn't be there. And I think that like that was where that episode was really funny because it allowed me to kind of just beam myself back to be that guy and the absurdity of the people and me interacting with them. It's not a neg on them. It's not a neg. It's just me not being there. It's the same thing if I was at the New York City Ballet and we're all in the back, we're all talking, and they're like, "What is this?" And it would be the absurdity of me being somewhere I shouldn't be or I don't belong. And I would say working at the New York City Ballet. I guess if I was just there, it would be okay. I just saw the Nutcracker. It's great. But
Oh,
be,
just getting tickets.
yeah, I love it. I see it.
Yeah.
I saw it like 10 years ago. I love it. I think the Christmas show is trash and the people who see that should be killed. But I like the Nutcracker because it's very wealthy, well-dressed families from Scarsdale, which is where I kind of want to spend my time. And not Rangers jerseys and like cheese. It's like, ugh. But so I think that a lot of it is like, can you remember? And I put myself back in the spot, and that's where just it was really funny because like I was just like, oh fuck, I live this.
Yeah, but then you take it like that extra absurdist level
Yeah,
where it's just
yeah,
like you're in the brains of all these people and what their goals in life are,
yes.
and projecting like what they want and how they're justifying not getting it.
Well, that yeah, and that's the comedic angle of like, yeah.
It's a comedic angle
I
for
mean, my
you.
family gets mad. I have to see I shit talk my family a lot. I have to see them.
Boomer Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, I have to see these people, and they're like, "We don't talk like that." I'm like, "Yes, you do." I mean, those are lines my father has said. I love my father, but these are lines he has said. He's literally said to me and my friends when we tell him about like one of our other friends who's like, "Dad," my dad's like, "You gotta golf. You gotta make time to golf." He goes, "The older I get, the more I regret." He goes, "Even just play nine. Just play nine. Take a half day." I mean, it's just like these are lines from not only my dad, but the boomers that I grew up with in Long Island, my friends' parents, who would talk about buying condos for all of dinner. Like, we want to go to Naples, and it kind of and I love these people. I grew up with them. It's not that I dislike them. It's like you make fun of the things you know and love and care about, and that's kind of what people don't understand. Bill Hicks used to shit on the South, but he was from the South. He knew the South. A lot of it frustrated him. A lot of people, Sebastian Maniscalco makes fun of the people he grew up with and their mentality and everything, but he loves them. I mean, so it's like as much as they're just ripe for parody. The boomer
Right.
generation is ripe for parody.
I think that's a key because if you're just angry at who you're talking about, it's going to come across as vindictive.
Of
The
course.
audience is an X-ray machine. They're going to say, "Oh, he's just angry." What
Yeah.
you're like with the office party one, you're really just. It's almost like you were turning the anger on yourself. Like you knew you were
Yeah.
off to
It's not
bigger
their
things.
fault I'm where I
Right.
shouldn't be. None of it's their fault. And I think that's part of the thing you have to realize is that a lot of it is you. But it's just very funny to look out at places in your life you've been that maybe you shouldn't have been and figure out like how am I going to extricate myself from those places? And